Well, I think it's important to kind of quantify what enlightenment means for you. Um, for me, it started with Kung Fu, not the martial art, but the TV series back in the 70s with David Carradine. And yeah, I love the action and all that kind of thing. But I particularly liked Master Po, Grasshopper's teacher. Something about him that just stayed with me. In hindsight, I can see that it was a sort of lack of doubt. He had a lack of doubt about himself, but I didn't know at the time. So then it was kind of a slow procession of this idea of enlightenment. I wouldn't say it was a burning issue for me. I was a teenager. I, had the raging hormones. I had all that stuff. But it was there. And as I'd come across things, and as I tracked the kind of progression of what enlightenment meant for me, it was a process of less and less bells and whistles, less and less miracles, less and less stuff, because I went from Master Po to kind of like Zen masters and kind of going, wow, these guys were actually real. This isn't just a made up thing on a TV show. This is an actual real thing. Real people were like this. Then Zen masters progressed to Indian masters, and all the time less bells and whistles, less miracles, autobiography of a yogi, that guy Yogananda. Then I, heard about Osho and that kind of thing, and you'd hear about these different people. I wasn't drawn to any of them really. I'd read them and I'd be interested, but all the time the idea of what Enlightenment one was getting closer to me. And eventually it led to like a 10-year relationship with Barry Long. And Barry Long just clicked with me. He was like, I could totally relate to him. And he was saying he was enlightened, unashamedly. And I mean, he said lots of other things unashamedly. But the enlightenment bit was the bit that really, stayed with me. So I, to sum it up, I got as close to Barry as I could, meaning physically, because he used to say that there was something about his presence. And I'd heard that before with other people who were enlightened, that, being in their presence was very helpful. So I was kind of into that. And it kind of seemed like it was an efficient thing, So I'd go to Barry's meetings. He'd have long, week-long things. Then he'd had this thing in Australia called a master session, and I'd go to that. That was like a 3-week thing. And I was doing everything in what Barry called his teaching, with I don't know if I had the very clear agenda of getting enlightened, with the idea of, the closer I got to Barry, the more chance I had of getting enlightened. And just being around him, seeing how he was, hearing him, even though he's a very different kind of personality to me. I mean, people have said that. They've like, oh, I heard you talking about Barry Long. I went and looked him up. God, yeah, he's very different. I don't like him or whatever. But it wasn't so much him, it was the energy. Because he was like Master Po. He just didn't have any doubt. And I did. And it was a very fundamental doubt. It was a doubt about myself as a person. That felt like there was something fundamentally wrong with me. And if I got enlightened, I wouldn't have that anymore. Again, this is all kind of hindsight when I say this. I don't know if I could have put it in words like that back then. So, yeah, I didn't think I'd ever get enlightened, really. I thought I'd just, be hanging out with Barry for all that time. So I was back in Dublin, and I heard about this woman, Catherine Ingram, who was coming to give satsang And like Barry was really hard on any kind of Indian stuff, Indian bullshit. That's what he used to call it. And but something, I don't know. I just went. And the first night I went, I was sort of sitting at the back, grumbling. I'd worked up a good kind of head of spiritual, I don't know, pride or something. I sort of thought I knew stuff, because Barry told me. So I'm like listening to her talk. Oh, what's she talking about? Contradicting her in my head, all the way through. But it disturbed me. Seeing Catherine Ingram just disturbed me, and I couldn't put my finger on why. So the next day I went back, and I sat right up the front, first row from the front, and I was listening to her talking again, still feeling disturbed, not grumbling so much, more like going, what is going on? What is it about her that I'm finding so disturbing? And then it just hit me. She's enlightened. She's got exactly the same energy as Barry. Different, completely different person. Like completely different. You couldn't get two more different people. Because if you go and look up Catherine Ingram, who's still alive and doing her thing, and a lovely person, but yeah, you compare her to Barry, no comparison in terms of personality, but the energy was exactly the same. And it's like this whole thing took seconds, where I kind of went, she's enlightened. I know she's enlightened. And if she is enlightened, then I am enlightened. Right? So that caused a big freak out on the inside of me. The whole idea, how dare I, how arrogant, just to think I was enlightened. But next thing I found myself on my feet, which is hilarious because nobody else was on their feet when they were asking questions. So I stood up and said, "Are you enlightened?" And she, kind of thinking like she'd be like Barry and go, "Yeah, sit down." You're making a big deal out of it. But she didn't. She kind of said, "No, well, it's a very loaded term. I don't like to use those terms." And next thing I heard myself saying, because I recognize that you're enlightened, I am enlightened. And she kind of, I'd say she was like, who is this guy? So, and that was it. Job done. It's never changed. And it was, there's so many things that are written about enlightenment, and like everything is the same and everything is different. That was so true for me. Everything was completely different and everything was completely the same at the same time. It was so strange. What else? There's another one before enlightenment: carrying water, chopping wood. This is a Zen one. And then after enlightenment: carrying water, chopping wood. That was so true for me as well. It's just what had changed was I didn't have that question anymore. I was exactly like Master Po and every other enlightened person I'd ever read about. I couldn't do any tricks. I still can't do any tricks. But I don't have that question in me anymore. I'm not looking for anything. Certainly not looking for enlightenment in the way that I was before. I've no question about it at all. And I've been through like lots and lots of different things. Like I continued to grow. I continued to change. I continued to work through my unconsciousness. But that fundamental question never returned, and like it's pretty soupy and black inside when I close my eyes, and there's very little constant, but that is constant. That never changed in all these years. That was late August 1996. So that's like coming up on 30 years. Never changed.